Is that better, chat?
No audio. Oh shit.
Yes. So sorry about that, guys. We've had our hiccup for the evening. Thankfully, it was only like 15 minutes in. But welcome to the podcast, everybody. And obviously, we're not gonna stop here. But we are talking about the Loot Crate bankruptcy. And for what I might have to do is just go ahead and edit this over to the RSS feed, and then you guys can get it there. But I'm so sorry about that, guys. I mean, I don't think we want to restart here. Well, we can at least restart kind of the stories coverage.
Let's give a quick TLDR here.
Yeah. So TLDR here. In case if you ever followed Loot Crate, they've been around since 2012. They had I believe it was this week they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Here's the damages. They have about 20 million in sales that haven't been shipped out. They have about 30 million in trade debt, and they're back on about 5 million in sales tax. So they're not in a good spot right now.
Oh, sorry. One sec. I said Loot Crate was distributing Hat in Time. That was Humble Bundle. So
oh, that's true. There. Actually, no, that's right. There are indie games that Loot Crate tried to sponsor, but I can't remember what they are for the life of me. But yeah, so we were getting into this on the model basically not working, and in a lot of cases, at least for me and Romney, we kind of shook our head at why this was ever a model. Like, why was this ever a thing? Because, in all honesty, they were probably putting out more. They were probably putting out more money than they were getting in. Bottom line.
Yep, it's pretty much. I mean, we mentioned the Telltale closure, and there's a lot of parallels to be drawn here, where maybe they got a little too caught up in getting the fancy licenses and getting the licensed gear, that they didn't really think of a way to keep it sustainable. And again, if you're listening on the RSS feed, you've probably already heard my spiel about when I had the very, 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 very limited sponsorship deal, which even then it wasn't even a case where it had ran its course. It was just a case they stopped sending me stuff and they stopped telling me anything, and so I just assumed that they were done. I don't know if the affiliate link still works or not. I just haven't bothered.
Yeah, I had, like I said, we're probably going to repeat ourselves a little bit, but I'll try through the magic of editing to fix that out. But we had a subscription given through a friend for about a year, and we never renewed it. In fact, in a lot of cases, like, I got a couple of good T-shirts out of it, but most of the stuff we got was junk that just clutters our house to this day. And most of them are like Funko Pop figures, because me and my wife are just not into Funko Pop.
Yeah, I'm so sick of those damn figures. I really am.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know what else we can add here aside from, it's going away. Is that kind of sad? I mean, a little bit. I don't like to hear people going out of business, but frankly, it's always boggled my mind as to why they didn't just go into a shop model and use the crates as a lure to bring people in. And then at that point in the shop, you can buy the T-shirt that you didn't get the crate for.
Yeah, and even looking in the details of the original LA Times article that the article we're referring to pulls from, apparently it's a lot worse, where the credit card processor, the company that actually processes the transactions, they're withholding the amount that customers have paid for because Loot Crate hasn't shipped the goods.
Yeah, I believe they've even frozen subscription payments and everything like that. They are basically saying you got to put this stuff out, or you got to pay up.
Yep, and basically in the midst of all this, Loot Crate is hoping to sell itself. They're basically hoping another company will come along and buy it. But looking at the other companies listed in these examples, this does explain one thing I noticed recently. If any of you who use Robinhood, you may recall another similar company called Blue Apron. Well, Blue Apron, you can buy stocks in Blue Apron, and I actually had some shares. And then, I think last month, they did what was called a reverse split, which was basically a case of, okay, the shares that you bought are now even worth less, and we are basically taking them back.
Yeah, so that's the other one that I would see a lot of YouTube. That's the other thing that we kind of got into is, like, a lot of YouTubers had sponsorships from Loot Crate. And so it was very popular to see from many, 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 many content creators. The other one that comes up, in my opinion, is Blue Apron. That came up a lot, especially with like the California-based YouTubers. It came up a lot.
But the big difference here is that, unlike Loot Crate, Blue Apron actually lets you choose what food you want to make.
Yeah, well, there's a much more viable model with Blue Apron as opposed to Loot Crate. Like, you're not going to keep food as junk. Food is perishable.
Yeah, food is perishable, but the other factor is choice.
Yeah.
With Loot Crate, you get what you get, whereas Blue Apron's like, oh, you want this item, or you want this item that's available this month? You get to pick and choose with Blue Apron, whereas Loot Crate, oh, you want another Funko Pop of another character you don't even recognize? You get the Funko Pop. You don't get a choice. Just take the damn Funko Pop.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, like the only complaint I've ever heard about about Blue Apron is sometimes, I guess, in some of the packages that they would send out a little bit more food than they should have. Whereas Loot Crate, I mean, Jiminy Christmas, how many crates did you get, Romney, where it was like 70% of it was not worthwhile? Like you didn't want any of this, and you almost kind of wish that you could send it back.
Well, given that I only got 2 crates, well, I'd say out of the 2 crates, one, I had more fun with the boxes than the actual items themselves, and 2, there were only a few items that I actually found some joy in that I was able to get some mileage out of. And some of the stuff that did come from a Loot Crate but wasn't part of my deal, I mean, many people may recall the badly dubbed businessman shredder gimmick from one of my Loot Crate videos. That item in and of itself came from a different Loot Crate because my older brother subscribed to the service, and he offloaded a lot of the crap onto me.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so,
that's kind of what we did. I hate to pick on Alex again, but there was a little Xenomorph figure. Like, I'm not saying we hate you, Alex, but like there was this little Xenomorph figure that was given to us. It looked really cool, but I'm not as big of an Alien fan as, say, Alex is. So at that point, like, yeah, actually, let's see if we can bring it up here. So, yeah, there it is. That's the Loot Crate Xenomorph that we got. And we basically just kind of pawned it off on Alex. We're like, get this out of the house. We don't care.
And I happily took it because I love Alien.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, at that point, it worked. But there is so much stuff from Loot Crate that just never got used.
yeah, and honestly, that kind of speaks to the fundamental problem, because, I mean, they try getting you in. It's like, oh, we have licensed gear from this and that franchise. Because the first one I did was the Build Crate, because they were trying to do a tie-in with the Power Rangers comics. But me, as someone who bought the comics when the day that they were first being published, I looked at the tie-ins like, oh yeah, you can get these on Comixology. I'm just like, but I already have the first 7 issues. Why do I need this? I don't, because I already have the first 7 issues. And it's crap like that where you're just like, if you're already following those franchises, then most of the stuff that you do want from those franchises, chances are you probably already have.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head on this one. And again, if you guys kind of missed the first little bit, I'm totally sorry about that for the live stream. Go back and check it out on the RSS feed. We will fix that out, and I apologize again. But let's go ahead and get into the next story here, because going along with the theme tonight of basically a bunch of skeletons in the closet now coming out to the light of day, 2K has had a bad year. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right here and now. 2K Games and Gearbox Studios have had a bad year. Specifically in regards to the fact that the much-anticipated Borderlands 3 finally was announced. It's literally coming out next month. So, like, the hype should be behind them, but unfortunately, we can't cover all of the Randy Pitchford nonsense that has happened this year. In fact, a lot of that stuff we just kind of missed due to absences, and I'm not going to go back and show how much Randy Pitchford is an asshole. If you want to know that, go follow his Twitter, because you'll get it pretty much. But there was a weird rumor that was going around for, I want to say, a few weeks. I was hearing a lot of gaming YouTubers talking about it, but it wasn't confirmed. But now we can happily say, unfortunately, that it has been confirmed. It is confirmed that 2K Games... So let me kind of set the stage here. There is a YouTuber by the name of Submato. He was a Borderlands YouTuber. Like, he did nothing but Borderlands coverage. And it just so happened that he got his hands on some leaks through various websites and accounts on leaks for Borderlands 3. like various bits of information that he would then also share to other people. Well, eventually 2K kind of figured out he was doing this and decided to send two private investigators, guys in suits, to his house and have him be questioned about where he got the Borderlands information that he got. Okay? Now, if you go to the door and you see two guys in suits that look like they've got some level of authority, what is your reaction?
Probably gonna be, holy shit, I'm about to get busted here.
Yeah, exactly. So you tell them whatever they want to know so you don't have to go to jail, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Supmato did that. But it turns out they really didn't have the authority to do that. They basically kind of work around it, and he just let loose on everything that he had done. And it even said, like, this is even a quote from Supmato. This wasn't found by me. It was also posted on various platforms like Reddit and other social media. That's how it was brought to my attention. So quite a few of us decided to follow these accounts because, well, simply put, we could. And that's where the leaks were. He wasn't the guy that was leaking this stuff. These were he was following the hackers that were getting these leaks. Well, 2K went nuts on this guy, basically outlawing him. I'm trying to get into the damage here that they officially did with his channel. They put about 7 copyright strikes, manual strikes, on his account. They basically wanted to shut him up. And I believe he even has in-game punishments for it. I'm trying to look those up right here now, but yeah, I think he even has some in-game punishments. I know that they banned his Discord. Like, they just deleted his Discord. It doesn't exist anymore. So, because 2K. And what's even sadder about this is, like, the story that we have wraps up with Supmato's final kind of assessment with Borderlands 3 on the horizon. My plan is to see how I feel come September and this is on whether or not he will buy Borderlands 3. My plan is to see how I feel come September. I don't know if I want to play the game. I don't know if I want to make videos. I don't know where I'm going to be at. I haven't been keeping up with anything. I haven't even watched the new character trailers. I'm still stoked for characters like FL4K and stuff. I just think I've been too close to the source for too long. I just need to step away from Borderlands, man. That's like his final word on it. He doesn't even know if he's going to go and get Borderlands 3 because of all the bullcrap that 2K has basically put him through. And in my personal opinion, I don't blame him. I don't blame him because, frankly, this is one... I get that he was not getting the information properly, but that wasn't on him. He wasn't the hacker that was going out and getting all the leaked information. He was just sharing it. So at that point, in some ways, I would almost say 2K and Gearbox, you should have just ran with it and said, oh, no, totally, we wanted those leaks to get out. And then at that point, like, maybe work something out with him so you can just funnel leaks to him directly. But you didn't do that. Instead, you sent two private investigators, to basically intimidate a YouTuber and to try and get him to tell his source. That's... I'm new to the Borderlands series, but that's dirty, in my opinion. Romney, Alex, you guys' take on this.
Yeah, this is scummy 2K, really.
This is really scummy action.
You know, there's protecting your corporate secrets, and then there's just being, like, paranoid. I mean, come on. And I don't... This is something I just don't get about the gaming industry, is, like, the 20 million levels of secrecy that embody this industry. It's like, you look at the movie industry, and it's like, oh, there's leaks all the time, you know? I don't see goons from DreamWorks showing up at somebody's house because somebody leaked the latest Spielberg film or whatever. Sure. It's like, but whatever reason with games, there's just like this bizarre level of like hyper secrecy to the point it's like they're protecting national security interests. And
yeah.
It's like you need like 6 levels of military clearance to find out what your game is looking like in its alpha stage. It's like, give me a break. Games go through so many changes and revisions before they're finished. It's like, who cares what what some leaks are from when your game is still in the development process. It's probably going to get changed anyway.
If anything, it helps the hype. Like one of the things that I love as a World of Warcraft fan, I always love when an expansion gets announced, and then literally the next panel or the first panel after that is to go into more detail as to what this new expansion is going to be. You'd think that a lot of game companies would just roll with this.
Yeah, it's not like somebody's publishing like source code for for like an engine that you developed or anything. They're just showing screenshots of your game that's still in development. Just screenshots of some graphics. It's like, how is this going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form? I don't see any corporate espionage, potential here.
No, in a lot of cases, like my only theory on the matter is that there is such an emphasis with having that big reveal trailer at E3 that a lot of game companies want to be the one that just wins everybody over. Everybody wanted to be Resident Evil 2 Remake last year, and this year, Cyberpunk 2077. They want to be that, and therefore they try very hard to keep things very secret so that they can then have that big reveal. But it just doesn't work that way at all. Like, eventually stuff is going to get found out. I mean, for crying out loud, we knew stuff about the Switch before the Switch trailer even dropped. And that was because
before it was even called a Switch.
Yeah, exactly. Like, granted, I don't necessarily agree with the woman now, but there was somebody specifically leaking stuff out from Nintendo, and Nintendo didn't care. Like, I think maybe they were trying to do stuff behind the scenes, but...
I'm sure they cared, but they certainly didn't care enough to go send freaking hired
yeah, they didn't care enough to go hire the Yakuza to go hunt her down, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a difference here between, gangsters and private investigators, but let's just look this in the eye and call these private investigators what they were. These were goons that were hired to go and intimidate a YouTuber. Romney, your take on this.
Honestly, I'm not really sure what else to add beyond what has already been said. I mean, I understand the idea of, we want to keep our stuff, to clamp down on leaks and stuff, and especially cases, we want to see if anyone's violating their NDAs. But at the same time, I mean, come on. I mean, literally sending goons after a YouTuber and trying to intimidate people from talking about the game, I mean, that's not going to be good PR. Naturally, people are going to be pissed off and less inclined to buy the game if that's the attitude you take. I mean,
I'm going to be 100% honest. If I'm Supmato, and I have the money, I'm hiring a lawyer. I'm literally hiring a lawyer, and I'm suing them for I don't even know the term that I'd go for, but like this is some bullshit from 2K, and frankly, I think I've already seen a lot of coverage on this via Reddit, and your fans are not happy, 2K. Your fans are not happy, and this is going to affect you in the long run. It may not be as big as I'm making it out to be, but you're going to get affected because some people are just going to say, fuck Borderlands, pardon my French. But
yeah.
F Borderlands, we're not interested anymore. Probably sell off their copies because along with what Pitchford has been doing all year, he basically devolved into a crazy person. And this, your hype moment is gone from that Borderlands 3 reveal. Nobody's hyped about it anymore. That's the sad reality here. This was Borderlands 3 for the last two E3s was the most expected title. And then we would hear from the commentaries like, why wasn't Borderlands 3 announced? We know Gearbox is working on something. And then they'd go the next year and go, well, this is going to be the year that Borderlands 3 happens. And then the year that it does, just big crap snowball going down the hill. You've lost all the hype that you would have had. I think I pretty much hit the nail on the head unless you guys have other things to add.
Honestly, it's not much else to really say. I mean, again, I get the idea of wanting to keep your secrets, but at the same time, it's very much a case, pick your battles. I mean, this was not the type of thing to do to guarantee that people would be hyped for your game. It's a dick move. That's all it really is. It was a dick move.
Exactly. This was... And what's sad about this too is that it could have been fixed so easily. Just run with it. Just say, "Oh no, yeah, totally that happened," and then you talk to this guy behind the scenes and say, "We know that you didn't get this properly, but we appreciate you for getting us this hype. Talk to us next time, and we'll give you official trailers to put out instead of sending goons to get your source." All right, so I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head. Moving on into the next story. This one is been covered, I think, for a few months now. And in some cases, it couldn't be confirmed, and it was considered rhetoric by a lot of YouTubers and a lot of media outlets. But it looks like the skeletons in the closet are finally out to be put before the light of day. Disneyland is not doing well after the release, or not the release, but the opening of Galaxy's Edge. Which, if you guys don't know what that is, first of all, what rock are you hiding under? I'd like to join you. If you don't know, Galaxy's Edge is the new Star Wars land that was going to be put into the Magic Kingdom, therefore replacing Frontierland. And I've been hearing about this stuff since May of audio, or basically the Galaxy's Edge audience just slowly dwindling, and stores running out of merchandise, and you go into those stores and like there's a majority of it empty. I think the restaurants are well taken care of, but now we're also hearing that they're cutting employee hours for it, and this just broke today. They are now offering discount bundles to get people into Galaxy's Edge. So Disney's not in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the details of the article itself, one quote pretty much summarizes it succinctly, trying to see who it is attributed to. It looks like it's from an employee who's remaining anonymous, where they basically state the problem is that Star Wars, as in Galaxy's Edge, took too long to build, so they rushed out the opening with only one cool feature, which makes sense. If there's only one real attraction, well, one attraction.
Yeah, I think that was one of the bigger problems, is that like one ride's available and everything else is still under construction.
Yep, that explains the case of, okay, well, no wonder no one's showing up. There's nothing there.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's probably hurting them. I actually tried to look this up too, because I know that by now the Galaxy's Edge in Disney World should be open, and I'm kind of wondering if it's affecting Disney World sales as well. I could only find Disneyland sales.
Well, yeah, because according to the article here, the one in Orlando isn't open yet. It opens on the 29th.
Oh, okay. I thought it opened in July. Okay, so that makes sense then. So maybe they've had a little bit more time to work on it, and so therefore maybe hopefully it will have a better opening than
Plus
Disney.
the other thing to consider is also the time of year, especially around this time of year. It's August. People are going to be going back to school. I mean, you still have some people who do vacations because this is the time where you can save money, but that's probably the other factor is that, hey, it's kind of a dead season. You're not going to have as many people coming to the park during this time of the year, not until, like, the holidays.
Yeah, it really seems to me like, I don't know, May have been a good time to, or I believe they opened up in April. April might have been a good time to do that, but I don't know. Like right next to summer, I don't think people want to go to a place that's hotter.
Yeah.
Like in our case, where we live in a place that actually gets snow, like the perfect time to go to California or Florida is in like January, so you can not have to deal with the snow for a little while.
Yeah, but looking at this, like if they opened up in April, well, I just have to say this. The reason it worked for Winter Soldier to release it in April is because in a movie theater, you're inside, and it's air-conditioned.
Very well air-conditioned, might I add, my friends. Yeah, and they've even said that the hours for the employees has been cut to bare minimum, so 30 to 35 hours for some weeks and even less on others. So Disney employees, like, I know, like, I don't know about you guys. If you guys have heard some of the horror stories for people who work for Disney, I know that on Game Grumps, Aaron Hansen, Ego Raptor, likes to tell a lot of the stories for when he worked for a Disney park. and his wife worked for Disney, and I know some people who work at Disney, and it's not the magical train ride that a lot of people make it out to be. It is a lot of work for probably not as much money as you should have earned.
Yeah, it very much is a place built upon an illusion. Now, while I haven't seen the episode, this was a comparison someone used for me. And coming from Avatar: The Last Airbender, when the main group of people are touring Ba Sing Se and naturally have the easily replaceable tour guide that basically is meant to maintain the illusion that this is actually a cool place, but the cracks start to show, that's basically Disneyland. Another good channel that contains a lot of stories of what it's like to work at Disney would be Swoozy. He's got a number of stories talking about when he worked at the Disney parks.
Yeah, and work.
Yeah, it's very much a case where, as a theme park, it is all about maintaining that illusion. I mean, people have done scholarly papers about the depths of psychological manipulation at play at Disneyland, at Disney World.
Yeah, and here's the thing: like we are coming in for a vacation. We don't get exposure to it, but if you get exposure to it long term, it becomes a major issue.
Yeah,
I've even seen like some of the friends that I know actually worked for the Disney parks. Like they are so jaded on Disney content now. Like they don't even want to watch the movies anymore because it brings them back to working at the ticket booth or working as a Snow White double.
Yeah,
kind of thing. It's not a pleasant sight.
Indeed, and especially, and there was a particularly fascinating news story NPR ran a few years ago, kind of discussing, well, kind of the way a lot of historians feel about the way Disney has handled fairy tales and how how Disneyland tries to present a fully sanitized version of reality. Lindsay Ellis brings up a good example in her Disneyland video where they talk about the Futurama episode with the whalers on the moon.
Yeah,
how you have the theme park on the moon that pretty much is a complete fabrication of what the moon is actually like, but it's the same thing. It's a case where, yeah, it's all an illusion, and that, and just looking at the way things are, bringing it back to Galaxy's Edge in particular, when you consider the discourse that's surrounding Star Wars at present, the level of hype for the new films isn't there the way it was.
I mean, I'm sure you got the diehards to go. Like, the diehards are gonna go because it's Star Wars. They want to have that Star Wars world. But yeah, considering a lot of the controversy that's surrounding Star Wars being owned by Disney, I can't help but wonder if that also played into the poor entrance of Galaxy's Edge into the Disney theme park.
Yeah, it definitely would have to be a partial factor, because prior to the new trilogy that we're witnessing now, there was a lot of hype regarding a lot of the Star Wars events they would do, where you would have people like Ray Park doing like actual demonstrations and teaching people how to move like Jedi and stuff like that, and the various events like that were just Star Wars events as opposed to a Star Wars land. And then the new movies came out, and you then had, well, the fan base effectively splitting in 30 different pieces.
Yeah.
And so naturally,
in some cases, some of those splits happen by Force Awakens, if not Rogue One.
Yeah, basically you've had splits Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi especially, and even stuff like Solo and the other anthology stuff, and even the direction of the current extended universe. It's a case where Star Wars no longer has that sense of awe, that level of fascination people once had, because it's just become just as corporate as everything else Disney touches.
Yeah, what's funny is that, I've been following a lot of the Disney Plus coverage because, bottom line, my family's going to want it. Like, I can't avoid it. I'm getting a Disney Plus subscription because
I need your little Einsteins.
I need to have little Einsteins. I need to have all the kids shows, and that's basically what they're going to watch on it. But I'll admit, there are some things on Disney Plus that I'm fairly interested in. One of the things I'm interested in, for example, is the 7th season of Clone Wars. The 7th season out of nowhere for Clone Wars. What's funny is that that's not even the most actively advertised show that they're doing right now. That would be Star Wars Resistance. Do you guys want to take a gander as to how well that's doing? It got canceled after its 2nd season.
Yeah.
But let me just give people an example here. 5 seasons of Clone Wars, plus a 6th one exclusively to Netflix, although I have a feeling it'll go over to Disney+. The 7th season is just going to be going into more details. That'll be Disney Plus exclusive, and it'll bring a lot of people in. Then you had, Star Wars Rebels last for 4 seasons. And people still want a 5th season from Rebels. Nobody wants Resistance.
Nope.
Nobody does. And that seems to be kind of the mode. Like, if they want to do anything with the new trilogy, there's a lot more uncertainty with it as compared to doing stuff with the original trilogy or even the prequels to some extent.
Yep. And I think part of the problem with that, especially when you consider a good example, looking at the Star Wars comics that Marvel has been putting out, a lot of the really successful ones are all stuff focused on the prequels or the original trilogy, that gap of time.
Yeah.
Whereas anything tied to the new trilogy, most people don't really bat an eye at, or even anything tied to any of the spin-offs they've released thus far, for that same reason. And it's pretty telling, considering that the trilogy we're supposed to get after Rise of Skywalker is basically going to be in a completely different universe, for lack of a better term.
Well, I think they've scrapped that idea. It was Rian Johnson's idea, and he's no longer doing it. I think they're going to do a trilogy, but it's not going to be based off of what they were going to... I know it's the end of the saga, but they're not going with the Rian Johnson idea anymore.
Well, yeah, they're not going with the Rian Johnson idea, but they have confirmed it is basically going to be a new galaxy, just a brand new story, just completely starting over. So, new galaxy, effectively a new franchise, just with, Star Wars painted on it.
Pretty much. And I actually have seen a lot of diehard Star Wars fans, and I want to ask this question of you guys, too. Like, Galaxy's Edge, a lot of that stuff is based in the new trilogy. A lot of people don't necessarily know if they like this new trilogy. I know a lot of Star Wars fans, myself included, my family included, hoping beyond hope that Rise of the Skywalker at least gives us something that we can work with, at least gives us some hope for getting something good out of this trilogy. But even now, I'm starting to have doubts. I really am.
Yeah, it's very much what it comes down to is that, I mean, as much as I hate to say this, but now that it's basically being designed by committee, there's no soul. That's the honest truth of it. I mean, at least back when George had control over it, you could tell there was at least a unifying idea behind each set, both the original and the prequel trilogy. But here, it's just a case of there's no soul, there's no heart to it, there's nothing that indicates that there's actual inspiration. The series is basically regurgitating and cannibalizing itself in this weird, awkward cycle of eating itself, then puking itself up over and over and over and over and over again until all you're left with just is a bunch of mush and pain.
Wow. I just envisioned Evangelion in my head for some reason. Anyway, Alex, go ahead.
I don't think I have much more to add, but yeah, that's definitely going to be a big part of it. If the park is kind of barren, kind of doesn't have many good attractions, and is probably a little too focused on the new trilogy and doesn't have enough, sprinklings of the old and prequels, yeah, you're going to kind of shut out some of the other Star Wars audience out there. People who maybe just don't, even if they are necessarily fans of the new trilogy, even those ones might be like, yeah, that's great and all, but where's the rest of it? I'd be like that too if I went. I'm like, okay, that's cool and all, but where's the rest of it?
To wrap this story up, I'm going to ask another question really quick. Okay, so we know the problems that are happening right now. There isn't enough merchandise. I think the restaurants are fine. We know that there's a lot of people in Star Wars garb that are out there to nobody. But we also know that there's one ride open, and I think there's 3 or 4 that are set in that park. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, over the next year, they focus on getting those rides opened. They focus on getting lots of merchandise into those stores and giving, you could probably do this with New Trilogy as well, but maybe focusing your characters walking around more New Hope or a more original trilogy and prequel trilogy era, to be able to kindle that nostalgia factor for a lot of the Star Wars fans that'll probably be going in there. Let's just say they do this in a year's time. Do we see that this is going to improve for them?
It might. I mean, they managed to turn around Euro Disneyland. That was kind of a flop. Kind of a flop on arrival. So, if if they manage to, salvage this like they did Euro Disney, it could turn around for them.
And I honestly think, like, I might be wrong about this. Like, I don't have articles off the top of my head, but I could have sworn that California Adventure, when that opened up, it had problems.
Yeah, it did.
It had a lot of barren stuff. And also, when Disney opened the Animal Kingdom, that was also barren because there was a big problem with parents feeling it was too educational. So, I mean, this is just probably something that Disney has dealt with, and they're just going to work with. I know that they're a lot more concerned about this one compared to others, but I think they just bank too much on the Star Wars name to bring in all the audience.
Yeah, that's probably pretty much what it comes down to, is that they are going through the growing pains of any of their other attractions they've brought out.
Yeah.
And not learning from history and thinking, hey, stuff like this takes time before it becomes a major mainstay. It also doesn't help that they're also destroying a bunch of stuff that has been major mainstays in favor of this new stuff. So it'll probably improve. Like, situations will improve if they improve in a year's time, but it won't be to the leaps and bounds that they're hoping for. It's going to be a steady crawl.
No, because even I remember with Universal when they got the Harry Potter, because when we went on our honeymoon, the Harry Potter experience was barely open. It had one ride working and one that had a lot of problems. So, like, for example, if you wanted to tour the castle, you could do that. Like, that ride was functioning. But then they also had one based around the Tri-Wizard tournament, the chasing around dragons on a broomstick. That one had lots of problems. And so a lot of people kind of avoided that. But now I hear that they fixed all those issues and everybody loves the place.
Yep, it's just, that's the thing. We're living in a society that's used to instant gratification, not realizing that stuff like this takes time to refine and to get going. I remember back when the college paper covered the first Salt Lake Comic-Con, and one of the reporters got to talk to Noah Hathaway, who played Atreyu in Neverending Story, and he kind of talked about how he still occasionally gets stuff for the Neverending Story attraction in Europe, but again, same thing. It takes time to get things working properly. That's the same reason why the Muppets stuff that they tried adding to the Disney parks didn't quite pan out. They didn't wait for the time for the fan base and everything to build up over time. And that's just what this is going to take. It's going to take a lot of time for it to find its footing. And hopefully Disney will be patient enough, but with the way things are standing in the current media landscape, it's hard to say for certain.
Yeah, and the other thing I've also kind of heard is that in regards to the Muppets, we're probably going to also start seeing a push, because since they own the Henson properties, at least I've heard about this, when the Netflix series drops, we're going to see a couple of Dark Crystal people wandering around the Magic Kingdom. So at that
maybe, but
yeah,
again,
but just to capitalize on it, it'll probably creep out a few kids, but they just want to advertise it.
And that's if they even invest that much, because I remember that was something people speculated on back when Disney owned Power Rangers, whether or not they were going to incorporate Power Rangers
That's
into
true,
the parks.
And they very rarely had Power Rangers out.
If they did, because a lot of the times that I've heard, I heard they kind of did this, but I haven't been able to find anything concrete of any events.
The only thing that we know of, just from friends again that I know worked there, is that they would have them, but they were at really weird times, and it would only go for the current season. So basically, they only wanted to advertise what was currently being advertised. So Wild Force, I think it goes all the way to RPM was the last Disney one, right?
Yeah, RPM was the last Disney one. And
so they would do those costumes, but you wouldn't get, like, Mighty Morphin.
Yeah, but to be fair, that at least makes some sense, because there's a precedent, because that's what they do in Japan, where they have events tied around the current Sentai season, events tied around the current Kamen Rider. So there's at least a precedent. It's just, again, Disney didn't capitalize on that franchise as much as they should have, because, again, the CEO was a bit of an idiot.
Yeah, the problem there was, in my opinion, was the odd times. Because, like, for example, they would give, like, 12:45. Well, then at that point, they assume that the kids are going to be done with lunch. The thing that they didn't account for is that parents are already pretty frustrated at that point, and they are wanting to get their kids to their favorite rides as soon as possible because it's frickin' hot, and they want to go back to the hotel for a while, kind of thing. So that would work out not in their favor. And then the other one was, it was like 5 or 6 o'clock when a lot of the kids, a lot of the people that, the demographic that you're going for aren't there because they're back at the hotel room getting rest.
Yeah, again, that's the thing when you're running any sort of theme park of any kind, is that you got to kind of be mindful of what crowds do what and where and when, because that's something I've even seen happen at our own local theme park, Lagoon, where they have to kind of try to balance when they were doing things in their Wild West area, making sure that, when they're doing their Wild West show, that there's people to actually freaking watch the thing.
Which you would think that they would know by now because they've been doing it for years, but no, they did. That's why in a lot of cases when I get told these stories, I'm just thoroughly convinced they didn't want Power Rangers to be advertised. They don't want, a lot of the Lucas stuff that isn't Star Wars. They don't want that advertised either, so they're not going to.
Yeah, it's a mess, plain and simple. But
Pretty
that's
much.
that's what Disneyland inherited, is that, hey, you paid for this license, you paid for this material, do with it what you will, and just don't expect it to make the bank right out the gate, because that just doesn't happen. I mean, I'm pretty sure even when Disneyland itself first opened, it took a while for it to actually, find its footing, and that was back when Walt was alive.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, so I think we've hit this nail on the head. Let's go ahead and move on into the next story, because again, we have a theme here of The Secret is Out. And this one is a big one. And in fact, I would actually say this is probably the second biggest one that we got a lot of listener requests for, but I wanted to put it lower on here because there's a lot to go over. So you guys might have to fill me in on this. I know that Trump was doing an executive order to have the FTC and the FCC look into Silicon Valley, or did they just go in on their own? I can't remember.
I'm not sure about this part specifically, at least based on what we have on the agenda in particular.
Bottom line is what I'm saying is the FTC and the FCC are looking into social media. All right, so given the Senate hearings that are happening right now with Facebook, with Twitter, now YouTube, they're looking into all of the back books of all of these social media platforms, and we're finding out a lot of really disappointing confirmations from these investigations. In fact, a lot of YouTubers have been screaming about this stuff for years, ourselves included, and now we actually have confirmation from this investigation. The first thing that we're going to go over is, and this is not surprising to me in the slightest, is it is confirmed, according to YouTube's information, YouTube moderators, and also testimony from YouTube moderators, popular creators get away with a lot more shit than smaller creators. This was a big question that I remember we had a couple of years ago in regards to Logan Paul. Why is he still on YouTube? And I think we pretty much hit the nail on the head of what it was. He had merchandise. He had a big enough following. And so therefore, they more pedaled to him and said, okay, well, he's the one that's bringing in the advertisers, so we're going to stick with him, even though we think he did something bad. But the story in particular that we have, the moderators that are being interviewed are saying, we wanted to punish these guys. We wanted to do copyright strikes on them, but then our bosses would basically just come in and go, no, they're marketable. Ergo, we can't do anything to them. A couple of the examples that this article gives are Logan Paul, Felix PewDiePie Kjellberg, sorry. And also Steven Crowder got brought up into it as well. These are people, these are the ones that the moderators wanted to put on copyright strikes, wanted to do community guideline strikes. And because they were so marketable, which is funny considering that YouTube and Steven Crowder don't have a good relationship right now, they still saw him as a marketable aspect, and if he left, advertisers would leave too, and therefore they got away with a lot more.
Yeah. Big surprise there, right? Sarcasm mode.
Yeah, I mean, as Alex posted when he shared the story with us on our secret page, stand on your head if you didn't see this coming.
Yeah, pretty much. And at this point, I've actually gotten a little bit of flack for the flack that I've been giving a lot of bigger YouTubers. Most of the stuff that I've been going into is that they're too big to necessarily care about those beneath them. And if they act like they care for you, then it's a 50-50 thing. I know that there are some that do, but there's a lot that don't. And this is one of those examples why. They were literally getting better treatment by YouTube. And one of the best examples I think that can be given on this is, I don't know about you guys, but I got annoyed hearing that when a copyright strike would happen to somebody of like 100,000 subscriptions, they had a handler that they could go talk to. Where's my handler?
Me. Well, that doesn't totally surprise me because a lot of the bigger channels tend to be aligned with MCNs, and MCNs often do handle things like copyright strikes. So that's not too surprising to me.
Yeah, but that is one of those examples of popular because they're popular, because they're putting out the content that people are watching. This is an example of YouTube giving them the golden treatment, whereas a majority of the YouTube creators out there, they just got shoved into the shit pile. Pardon my French.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I get it as a case of, oh, hey, these bring in a bunch of advertisers and bring us the advertising dollars. It's just the classic case of, okay, YouTube, if you're going to be preferential, at least be honest about it. Don't pretend
I think that's the biggest problem that we have about this, is that it makes sense for them to do this. They need to have some kind of income. We just wish they'd been honest about it. I don't know why this was so hard for you, YouTube. We had to find out from the FTC of all people?
Well, looking at this doesn't actually seem to be from an FTC investigation. It looks like these moderators came to Gizmodo.
Yeah, to the Gizmodo article that we have, this is a lot of the moderators.
So these moderators stuff. Yeah, the original article here is that this isn't part of an FTC investigation, but rather that these are moderators who went to the Washington Post to basically share their story, and then Gizmodo picked up what the Washington Post had reported. So this actually has nothing to do with the FTC.
But the other story that we actually have is pertaining to it. So it's pertaining to the investigation. But yeah, so bottom line on this, I know that it's not really all that surprising, and I know that we're all of the opinion of, like, if you'd just been honest about this, then we could have worked with it. And we could have said, okay, well then, because I think the most argument you would have gotten from smaller YouTubers is, well, if you start showcasing our content a little bit more and let us become the bigger YouTubers, we would be okay with it. But they tried that, and they were only interested in the young up-and-comers being, big TV stations. Because it wasn't the trending tab supposed to be that. It was supposed to highlight new creators.
That was the claim, but, well, look how well that turned out.
No, and 80% of the time, I don't know about you guys, whenever I see the trending tab come up on my YouTube, I turn it off. Because 80% of the time, it is Tonight Show clips, it is major commercials involving Terry Crews, all that stuff. There's never, like, a new creator that is doing well that I see in that. That's the sad reality there. So a lot of this article is not surprising. Let's get into the next one, because this is going to be combined with it. So we did mention that FTC investigation. Well, the other thing that we found out about it is that if you were a popular streamer on either YouTube or Twitch, and you were playing a game that involved a loot box system, you were getting better odds than everybody else. Gee, I wonder why. They would literally go in and augment. So, like, for example, if Ninja was streaming Fortnite, and I think Fortnite runs off of a loot box system. If not, then I'll use, like, Battlefront 2. He goes in, he's playing it, and he gets a loot box. And all of a sudden you see, like, all these really cool items coming up in his recording. Then you go and play it, and you get Jack. Maybe, like, after your 2500th box, you get something good. But most of the time, you're getting stuff that's either repeats or not worth it. So we can now confirm, according to the FTC investigation, that this was also happening as well. If you were a popular streamer on YouTube, Twitch, I don't know if it's in DLive or Mixer as well, but they would augment the odds for your loot boxes to give you better stuff so that then you could incentivize your audience to go and buy into the loot boxes, whether you were aware of it or not. Thoughts?
Just more proof that loot boxes are terrible and need to go away.
They're so terrible that another article that I wanted to put onto this, but I couldn't get the article to work, was that the FTC basically came out and said, no, acknowledging that this is a thing is not going to solve the problem.
So this does seem to shoot the hole in the argument that that the pro loot box people like to make. That is, everybody gets a little something. Well, I don't think so. If you kind of tend to rig some of these in better favor, then it really is just gambling.
I mean, in the case of like early loot boxes where Overwatch was doing it, I heard that there was a lot better odds of being able, especially if you did the events, of getting the skins for them. Like they wanted to get those things out there. But in the case of like Battlefront 2, no, absolutely no dice. But then you go and watch an Angry Joe video and he's got nothing but purples. Why? Because he's Angry Joe. That's the bottom line of it. This is why loot boxes have become a very... This is a very bad incentive to play games now. Like when there wasn't gear that was essential, when there was just nothing but cosmetic stuff, that made sense. But even now, it doesn't make sense because now it's all predatory. It's all predatory.
It's predatory.
This is a microtransaction to go to video game Vegas and hit the slots. Like if I'm going to pay my money in Heroes of the Storm, I know what I'm buying with it. I know that I'm buying a hero. I know that I'm buying a specific skin for that hero. Going into a loot box, it's as random as... This is basically adult equivalent of trading card games. Most of the time, you're just going to get rares. Not like the super, ultra, mega rares. You're going to get rares.
Which then raises the question: if they're labeled rares, yet everyone gets them, does that really make them rare?
I love that joke, especially now that Reddit goes nuts with it, especially in regards to Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like, can you really call silver handwriting rare? No, because everybody has them.
Yeah, I'm literally reminded of, it was an issue of this comic I used to read, which some of you may recall, Bongo Comics. They published the Simpsons comics, and they had a series called Bartman. And the first issue literally discussed how Comic Book Guy in his comic shop had the foil-covered comics, and then had comics that didn't have any foil printing on them, but because they didn't have the foil printing, they were the more rare comics. Like, oh yeah, these standard ones have the foil printing, these ones that don't have foil printing are much more rare, leading to hijinks ensuing, but it's the same basic thing. The card that would get the silver foil would probably be a lot more rare if it didn't have it.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Like, so, with both of these stories brought up, and even if the live chat wants to get involved with it too, this is just... I don't even want to say I'm disappointed with all of this news. Because I kind of expected something to this extent was happening. I can say I'm disgusted. Because now we had to find out the hard way. Like, YouTube's moderators had to come out of the woodwork to tell us that they were doing that. And the FTC had to unearth the loot box odds. I have a feeling we're going to see even more from this investigation of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of them. And none of it's going to look good. It pisses me off. Especially in regards to the fact of, like, I remember those bright, optimistic days of seeing people going to YouTube for the first time and seeing a bunch of young up-and-comers being successful on it, and having that thought in your head, at least for a minute, that maybe you could be that guy. And this just confirms, no, you couldn't be that guy because the system's rigged. Just sucks. Absolutely sucks. Final thoughts on what?
We should have all backed Dailymotion when we had the chance. Sure.
I'm trying to think if I even knew about Dailymotion at that point.
Yeah,
I found out about
I-
Dailymotion more when I actually created channels.
When I first started, when I first started YouTube, I was on YouTube and VO a lot. VO's kind of gone to shit now, but VO at the time was ahead of the curve on YouTube because you could actually upload longer videos and most formats would work.
Yeah.
Granted, their uploaders sucked most of the time because I remember a lot of my videos just getting stuck at like 90% or something and just never finishing an upload. So
Yeah.
but either way, it's sort of like we all backed their own horse, and well, now we all have to suffer.
Well, and I think the dream for you and me was like when we started up the channel that we run together, is like the golden dream was to go and be on Blip, because then at that point you knew you were going to get paid, right? Well, what was it? 6 months, a year later, Blip folded.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so then at that point, YouTube became pretty much the only place in town. And yeah, it actually does make me want to support platforms, smaller streaming platforms like Mixer, or Mixer or D Live, or support video services like Dailymotion. Just because now it's, for as much as YouTube tries to make themselves out to be the little guy in media, they are not. They are very much the fat cats that a lot of the major networks are.
Yeah, plus, one thing to consider, though, with Dailymotion, though, if Article 13 is ever ratified in the EU, Dailymotion will basically go the way of the dodo.
Yeah, it pretty much will. Because I believe a majority of Dailymotion providers are European. So
Dailymotion itself is based in France, which is in the European.
At that point, it dries up. It's gone. And then YouTube's the only place that you can go to if you want to stream gaming. Then, Twitch is the big market, but you at least have some options for smaller market. I mean, for crying out loud, like, I don't know if I have permission to advertise this, Alex, so if I don't, then cut me off. But, like, you do Amino, and I think along with some other friends of the podcast that we know of, you guys are having more success on Amino than you probably are on YouTube.
For me, not personally. Bit of a disclosure here. I was invited not kind of invited. Okay, here's how it really worked out. So, friend of the channel and of myself is Baby's World, and she did kind of give me a referral to audition to become an Amino partner. I did. I kind of put in an audition. Didn't make the cut. No big deal. It's just how it goes. And so I don't really post much to the app as much as, say, BB's World or Rising Sun. Now, they are actually partners, so they're probably getting a bit more mileage out of it than I am. So.
Yeah, and I got the invite too, but I'm going to be upfront on this because I don't think BB's going to mind. She gave me the pitch, and at that point, it was January or February. I had 2 kids, and my life was kind of falling apart. So at that point, I just kind of looked at her and said, I really appreciate that you gave me this offer, but I've got some other stuff to work out. I've got way too much time going various places. And so I couldn't really do it. So, but again, thank you for offering that. But back into this story, I mean, is there anything else that we can possibly cover on it? I think this has pretty much made the loot box argument. I will say that. I think at this point you can use this for the pro move or the anti movement for them to use this as legit gambling.
Pretty much. I mean, it's indefensible at this point.
Yep.
It really is.
I can't remember if the states. I know a few states are arguing loot boxes, but I don't think it's a federal case right now, is it? I know countries are handling it, but I don't think the U.S. federal court is handling it.
Yeah, there's no federal laws right now regarding it. Obviously, there's hearings going on in the FTC to consider things like this, but right now it's just a lot of back and forth talking. And yeah, there are some states looking to take a bit more stronger action.
Yeah, I know Oregon's one of them.
Hawaii, I think, is one of them too.
Yeah, Hawaii was one of the first. I remember that.
Oregon, I know, is one of them. but I think those are the only two I've heard of. So there you go. This is gonna blow. In my opinion, this is gonna blow up in Silicon Valley's face. Just as a final thought, this is gonna blow up in their face because I don't even think we've hit the top of the iceberg of the stuff that's going on within these offices, and we're gonna find out more.
I wish, but I mean, at the same time, we've had far bigger scandals before this already. Between Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and some of the other dirty deeds to come out of Silicon Valley in just the last several months already.
Oh, I'm not saying it's going to be the end. I'm just saying we're going to find out more.
Sure, but at the same time, I don't really think it's going to blow up in their face. It's like, yeah, Facebook and them have been slapped with like a few thousand to few $1 million in fines, but it's all really just drops in the bucket for them.
Especially considering like Facebook's revenue and all that. Yeah, it's not going to hurt them that much.
You're finding $1 billion companies you're giving $1 billion companies a pretty measly fine and not much else. It's like it's a speeding ticket.
Big to us.
Big to us, but that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You're finding these companies that are worth billions, these several $1 million fines. But it's that's a speeding
what they're
ticket
basically doing. For those who are sports fans, this is the equivalent of, I can't remember who the athlete was, but dude in basketball who got like a $30,000 fine for punching a fan who threw a basketball at his head. $30,000 when this guy's making $1 million.
Yeah. Another good apt comparison is from the Simpsons episode Marge versus the Monorail, where they wheel Mr. Burns in like Hannibal Lecter, and the judge orders him to pay a fine, and he's like, "Smithers, get my wallet."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then he's like, "And I'll also take that Statue of Justice while I'm at it." Sold.
And now I just want to make a South Park joke about their interpretation of Mark Zuckerberg. I will block you. I will block you into oblivion. Ha! Woohoo! Ha! 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 That's literally South Park. Romney looks really confused. That is literally South Park's interpretation of Mark Zuckerberg. He is like he's like a tokusatsu villain.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it is South Park after all.
Pretty much. All right, so moving into the last story that we have, and then we actually have a few listener questions that we want to get into. This one technically happened, I want to say, 2 weeks ago, but a lot of people wanted us to bring it up, especially since we covered the announcement that Ninja, Tyler Blevins, had moved over to Mixer and abandoned Twitch. And this literally happened, I want to say, a couple of days after his first Mixer stream. That actually turned out, when we have all the numbers figured out, it actually did more of an audience than he usually got on Twitch, and by a big margin. So he had a lot of potential new viewers out of that, is what I'm saying. And unfortunately, after this, the best way that I know how to explain it is that Twitch basically treated his channel as deserted. And therefore, it was mainly intended to advertise other channels, to other active streamers, to be able to bring them in. You could watch previous Ninja videos if you wanted to, but this would go out of its way, or the main page of Ninja's Twitch page would go out of its way to advertise up-and-coming streaming talent for you. Except they had a little bit of a hiccup in that regard. I can't help but wonder if it was kind of intentional, but no evidence on that. One of the channels that was being promoted on Twitch, on Ninja's main Twitch page, was connected to porn.
Whoops.
Yep. Granted, here's the thing. I don't know, I can't remember if we covered this or not, but since, what was it, Dota 2? Or, no, it was Artifact. It was the card game based on Dota. Artifact was barren. Nobody was playing on it, and so you would have a lot of the seedier variety basically use Artifact to put on porn. And hence they actually had to remove Artifact as a topic that you can search for. So that's kind of what I think happened here, is that this was just one of those channels uploading porn that they just hadn't caught yet, and it got promoted by Ninja. Well, Ninja found out about this and had some scathing words to say to Twitch. And thankfully, the CEO of Twitch, Emmett Shear, did come out and formally apologize to Twitch, or to Twitch viewers, to Ninja, and to Ninja's audience, which, if you guys don't know this, Ninja is a Fortnite streamer. Fortnite is for what ages, Romney?
Well, younger kids.
Everybody, including younger kids. So you potentially had a lot of Ninja fans who are of the younger variety getting advertised porn. Ouch.
Yeah.
I tried to look this up, but I think Ninja has not accepted Twitch's apology on this. I don't think he's accepted. But the bottom line is that Ninja has responded, and Twitch did formally apologize, or at least Emmett Shear did, that this happened. Now, granted, he apologized in the very PR way, but he's a CEO. They're going to do that.
Yep.
Let's get into this. I'm just going to ask this question honestly. Do we think this was an accident, or do we think this was intentional? Because a lot of people are there's a 50-50 divide on it.
Intentional, like somebody
like
went
Twitch intentionally advertised lewd content on his page.
I wouldn't think so. I would.
Yeah.
I mean, other than being a little bitter, but that would just hurt Twitch, really.
Yeah,
Then
that's why in a lot of cases I think it was an accident, is because it doesn't benefit Twitch to do this. In fact, it hurts Twitch a lot.
Yeah, it really.
Because just as much as those kids have Twitch accounts, sometimes those Twitch accounts are their parents' accounts. And if they saw that this was happening, they'd immediately unsubscribe. And probably write a very scathing letter to Twitch customer support. Like, you put porn in my kid's hands. Thanks. Much appreciated. Now go take a long walk off a short pier. Kind of thing. And so I honestly believe it's an accident. Romney, what about you?
Probably it wasn't something malicious on Twitch's part, but probably that particular channel probably found a way to game the system to get promoted. And that's probably the more likely scenario, is that they probably knew a way to exploit the way the channels that were promoted, and thus they just managed to slip through the cracks, which, even if Twitch was being absolutely diligent, people would always find a way to do so.
Which is basically what the Artifact streamers were doing.
Yep, so that's likely what it was. It wasn't so much that Twitch was doing it, but more someone knew how to game the system. Yeah,
pretty much. That's how Artifact got popular. Not because of people playing the game, but because people were advertising porn in the Artifact subcategory. So I think that's pretty much the more likely scenario, is that this was just a random hacker who was trying to have some fun at Twitch's expense, and it ended up on Ninja's page, and ergo, this is what happened. Do I think that Ninja needs to retract anything? No. Do I think that the CEO needs to retract anything? No. This is just the thing that's happening, and apparently it's urged Tyler on to continue streaming on Mixer. So
yep.
If you're let's just say for the sake of argument, if Twitch did this intentionally, what was your incentive? To get Ninja back? Well, you're not going to get Ninja back from this.
Especially not now.
No, especially not now, because he knows that he has a younger audience, and he knows that just got advertised. And from what I understand, I know that there are streamers that do have codes of ethics. I also know that there are a lot of people that don't on Twitch. Say, for example, the one that gets brought up a lot that doesn't have rules is Dr. Disrespect, but Ninja does, because Ninja knows who's watching his videos. And so at that point, you kind of you hit a soft spot there. I don't think he's coming back to Twitch anytime soon. But yeah, final thoughts on this one. It's just a dumb story, but I know that some people wanted us to cover it. Unfortunately, the ones that wanted me to cover it were more in the they did it intentionally camp. I don't think Twitch did it, because it doesn't benefit them.
Yeah, if anything, it just would benefit the competition.
No.
Indeed.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into these listener questions that we have. We technically have two of them, but one of them is basically a wall of text. The reason it's a wall of text is because it's a very complicated matter. And I'm just going to be honest right here. I've had this question for 1 to 2 weeks. I unfortunately was only able to get it into my fellow panelists in like a few hours. But in that 1 to 2 weeks, I couldn't really come up with a solution. So let me go ahead and read this to you guys. This is from a listener and a friend of the podcast. So I get the point of if you want bad practices in gaming or other fandoms like, say, loot boxes to stop, then you don't buy their games. However, a bunch of people worked on it that don't support what the company is doing and just wanting to support their families or move higher in the company to try and make a difference. Can I still buy the game to support the little guys or those guys, even though it might not change the bad practices? That's a complicated situation to answer, because the bottom line is that, you know, when we buy EA games, we support crackpot CEO Andrew Wilson. But we technically also support those little guys who worked on games like Anthem and didn't necessarily have any authority, but just wanted to put out a good game. And they tried their best, and this is what they came up with. And do I necessarily hold them at fault or think that they're horrible? No. Absolutely not. Because they have no control over the company's direction. Andrew Wilson does. And Andrew Wilson has an agenda. Kind of thing. But it is a difficult deal. Like we've said numerous times on this podcast. Vote with your wallet. If you don't want these practices in your games, you need to stop supporting the games so that you hit them where it hurts. In the pocketbook. But you also hurt those who are the little guy. Those who are just, you know, little junior programmers on Anthem or on Call of Duty that didn't necessarily ask for all of the pain and anger and vitriol that they got when the game failed. This is a very complicated question, but I at least wanted to bring it to the panel to see if maybe we could give you a proper answer. But I'm just going to be honest with you guys, at least on my portion. This is one of those 256 shades of gray kind of question. This is where it gets very complicated. So, you guys' thoughts on this particular one?
Yeah, this is a pretty apt timing because, earlier in the show we talked about Take-Two and 2K, sorry.
2K, Take-Two, but they were working on behalf of Take-Two Interactive, which is Xbox.
Right. We talked about them sending, of course, PIs to go talk to a YouTuber for leaking some screenshots. And it's, you know, I remember like early this week or maybe last week, there was a hashtag trending on Twitter, because when is there not, that called boycott Borderlands because of this. And, you know, there were some people saying we should boycott, and there are other people making this argument. It's like, well, really, at the end of the day, you're just going to hurt the employees who have to crunch to make this game on time. Yeah. So a boycott's really not going to help. So, yeah, this is kind of
you got to look at this from a perspective. The CEO, the most work that they do, aside from running the company, and in some cases that's more complicated than in others, but some of the most work that people like Andrew Wilson get are going to E3 and showing off games.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Sorry, Alex, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So yeah, this is kind of where you do get to that point where you're in that gray area, damned if you do, damned if you don't. So the way I see it is, yeah, it's like you said, it's going to have to come down to your own personal preference. You know, I remember when we talked, this was like forever ago, but it was one of the many times we've talked about GameStop on this channel. And, you know, I made the argument, you know, we both kind of made the arguments, you can either not shop there, or you as a loyal customer can say, me as a loyal customer and me as somebody who likes this business and the store, I don't want to see this happening. So I think that's kind of what we do. Mm-hmm. What we can do in this case is think about something like that.
Yeah.
In the grander scheme of things, well, you know, maybe this just makes more of an argument for the unionization of game developers, is because it's like, well, how do and that's a loaded topic, and that's
Yeah.
not something we can really get into tonight. But it's sort of like that just is one more thing to think about. Is this one more reason to have unions in the video game industry, and maybe to start encouraging much more collective bargaining,
or at least having some kind of corporate representative for those little guys.
Yeah, because it's like, because where are we now? Well, that's where we're stuck between this rock and the hard place.
Yeah.
Is because, well, we could boycott, we could all theoretically boycott, and hurt the poor employees who are scrounging to make a paycheck, because Lord knows pay is not the greatest at these low level QA jobs. Or we can continue to endorse the shitty, terrible behavior of these terrible companies, because we all keep giving them money, and they all keep just inferring from that, like, oh, well, we're successful because people keep buying our stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
And let's just be honest about this. I know this is going to be really mean to say, but if you do not think that sheeple, for lack of a better term, exist in the gaming industry, you are wrong. There are people that will buy the next Madden even though you did nothing new for it, because they want Madden. They want to say that they have the most up-to-date Madden. Okay? Those people will exist. They will support. I've even been accused of being this, is saying, like, not acknowledging fresh turds from a video game series, and therefore continuing to support it. Like that, those elements will always exist, but it does complicate things, because it does look. Situations like this really do make you think, okay, is there some kind of representation that needs to go into place for these little guys who are working endless amounts of time on crunch and earning nowhere near what their higher ups are earning. Nowhere near. And it's a difficult question to answer. Alex wasn't wrong when he said that the unionization of game devs is a loaded topic. It is. It's very much a firebomb, because you're going to get a lot of crap happening there. But at the same time, it does make you question. You want to be able to support these franchises because that there is. Let's take it from an anime perspective. Alex wants to support an anime, not necessarily because he likes the creator. The creator could be a bit of a douche, but he knows that there's like 30 different people who are working in a very hot building under tremendous hours, getting very little sleep, trying to animate this.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly think about, a show like Rurouni Kenshin. We have the revelations that the mangaka's a pretty terrible person, but, it's like, should you watch the anime, even though the animes are kind of produced independently of the manga and also produced by a lot of different people? That's where you kind of run into these same quandaries.
Mm-hmm. I know that I've made this mention a number of times, and it always is a hot topic, but it does, I know that I make the jokes, but it does kind of bother me how much Hideaki Anno gives the middle finger to Eva fans. I wish he wouldn't do that as much. But then again, there are a lot of people who would bounce back to me going, well, you like J. Allen Brack, and we all think he's a douche over at Blizzard. You're not wrong in either of those aspects. Hideaki Anno can have a bad day and flip everybody off, and he doesn't care. Same thing with J. Allen Brack. Sometimes personalities just don't necessarily work, but they're the ones that are on stage representing the game that you are debating whether or not to buy. Not necessarily the people who work their butts off for it. No matter how many times Bethesda or Activision or whoever company wants to put out a video of going into the offices and figuring out how passionate we are. Because I'm starting to look at those things and think they're kind of loaded as well. Loaded with a bunch of PR bullcrap. Romney, you've been quiet on this. I wish I could put this better, but
yeah, I'm probably going to be the outlier of the group here in terms of where I stand on this, and it may be kind of hard for some people to hear. As well-intentioned as this may be, it comes across like the idea of, supporting these franchises to support the little guys. comes across to me as more of a naive rationalization, where it's kind of one of those cases where you're not really sure if you want to support the company, but then again, you really just want to buy it, and you're looking for some way to absolve yourself. And honestly, to kind of tack on to the point, it really just comes down to how strong you are willing to adhere to your own principles. I mean, using myself for an example, a lot of people talk about, oh yeah, like you'll eventually be able to reread Kenshin or enjoy Kenshin. Me, I'm not there. Knowing that, yes, the anime was worked on by a bunch of different people, but Watsky still gets royalties, and it's still he's still the one getting the money. Same case with the live action films, where yeah, a lot of people worked on the live action films, but Watsky is still getting those royalties, and it was with those royalties that he purchased the child pornography.
Yeah, I think he still gets those while he's in the cell, right?
Oh, he's been released. He's been out of prison now.
Oh, that's
he's
okay.
Still,
all right.
Yeah, Shueisha is still hiring him to finish out the Hokkaido arc. That's the ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a case like that where I get where you're coming from, but to me, it's not really can I just support the little guys? Like, yeah, you think you're making an impact, but are you really? Are you really wanting to support the little guy, or are you looking for some way to absolve yourself from partaking in this, even though you know the company that the money is going to is not a good company, or if it's going to a creator that you don't necessarily want to support? Like, to kind of tie it to books, a good example, Orson Scott Card, who, as many of us know, has a lot of inflammatory political opinions.
Yeah.
And naturally, that makes a lot of people wary about seeing the movie of Ender's Game or buying any of the books in the Ender series. And again, it's a case of, oh, well, these books accomplished so much good, and a bunch of people worked on the Ender's Game movie, but you got to bring it back to the main point of who is the main person benefiting from its consumption? The original creator. And so...
Yeah. And to bring it, sorry to interrupt, but like just to bring it back into a context of this podcast, Alex kind of brought it up best. If you want to support Borderlands because you love that game franchise and you want to support the little guys that are working on it, okay, you have the choice to be able to buy the game, but here's the consequence. You are also going to be supporting Randy Pitchford and all of his insane rambling on Twitter.
Yeah, and the important thing here is that you need to be honest with yourself about this sort of thing, because looking at this question, the way it's phrased, that's what it comes across to me. It's more like a rationalization someone would use for permission to continue supporting a particular creator. I mean, a good example, and although it's a bit of a reach, a good example, Channel Awesome is a really good example of that same regard, where you have the documented evidence of all the crap Channel Awesome did, but then you've got people thinking, oh, but they've really improved their videos. They're doing this that much better, even though there's still a lot of this crap they've done that they have not even addressed in any way, shape, or form, and the discourse has only gotten worse. But again, the same thing. When people ask themselves these questions, to me, it feels like they're just looking for permission to not care.
Kind of.
I mean, that's kind of how it comes across. And again, it's not an easy topic, and it really depends on how strongly you want to adhere to your principles. Mother's Basement made a pretty good point between Rurouni Kenshin and films like Chinatown, cases where the creators of both are really, really despicable human beings. Yeah, you can, support the off-brand products, but there is no off-brand Chinatown. There is no off-brand Kenshin. And so naturally, you're kind of stuck thinking, well, I like this product, but the creator's an asshole. What the hell do I do?
This is definitely a very loaded question. And I can see a lot of the arguments that Romney is making. Is that I know that this friend of the podcast is going in with the best of intentions, but you can also see kind of the underlying tone of, I just really want to buy the game because I really like it. All right? And here's the thing. I knew a lot of people around that time that bought Battlefront 2, that hated the loot boxes, that hated the seedy practices that EA was going under. And I know why they did it. Their kids were Star Wars fans. They are Star Wars fans. They wanted to be able to play Star Wars together. Does that mean that I have to go to each and every one of their houses and go, betrayal, at their door? No. They made a choice. That's the bottom line. Sometimes in life, we have to make hard choices. And this is one of them. I don't know how best to word it other than that. This is one of those. Because if you support the little guy and you buy the game, you're supporting the despicable CEO because he's also getting it. He's also getting your $60 to some extent. It's one of those things where I get this a lot where people get mad at me for bringing up that just because you paid $60 doesn't mean you're part of the art team. Well, maybe you should. Maybe you should be part of the art team, then your message would get heard. That doesn't solve anything. At that point, it's way too many cooks in the kitchen. You need to just have those solid areas. Or those solid fortified people who are working on the art assets. You can't just have everybody who paid $60 in the art room. That's way too many people talking. And some of them are not going to have that great ideas. So, here's my bottom line on this and how I'm going to answer it. It's your call. Bottom line. It's your call. If you want to support that little guy, then you must accept the consequence that you're supporting the tyrannical CEO, the tyrannical company. If you continue to buy those games, you're going to continue to support that system. If you choose not to, your consequence is you don't get to play the game that you may have been waiting 1, 2, even 10 years to play because you don't want to support tyrannical overlord. It's just a difficult deal, and everybody should approach it in their own specific way. For as much as I get flack of saying that people who buy Call of Duty, or at least this is the interpretation, people who buy Call of Duty are in fact lesser than me because I play the RPGs, I honestly don't care. Buy what you want. That's what I love about gaming. That's what I love about anime, is that there's something for everybody. RPGs work for me. Call of Duty works for you. Cool. We're both getting satisfaction out of the console we bought. I don't really care. Do what you want to do, but with that, you have some of these more complicated answers, especially if you have kids in the house and you really want that Catherine game. Oh, well, you probably better not play that in the house with kids around. Obviously. That's another hard choice that you have to make. And so that's my bottom line answer. It's your call. If you want to support the little guy, you can continue to tell yourself that you're supporting the little guy, and that's fine. Sorry, I'm talking way too much. If you want to support the little guy, that's fine, but for every choice there is a consequence. Your consequence here is that you're supporting a system that you don't like. Bottom line. I don't know how else to say it other than that. And now that we've thoroughly depressed people, this would be usually where we end the podcast, right? Wrong. I didn't want to end on this because I think that would suck. I would be doing to you guys what I've done to myself for the last few months. So, thankfully, we got another listener question from a friend of the podcast regarding last week's podcast that I think we need to address really quick. This is specifically addressing me and Romney. Alex can chime in if he wants to, but I have a feeling he's probably not going to want to. This person in particular watched our coverage of EVO 2019 last year. Why do I want to say last year? Last week. And we covered all of the season debuts and all of the new characters that happened. And the guy got really engaged into it. So much so that he wanted to ask this simple question. Do you guys have a subsection of your podcast or live streams or anything like that covers fighting games? Honest answer, no. But that's why I brought it here. Is that I would not necessarily be the person that you could only consult on the matter. That would also be Romney's call. So, Romney, what's your take on it?
Well,
doing something specifically for fighting games.
Well, I'm open to it. At present, we don't actually have a subset, but it's a case where if there's a demand, well, then it's something worth pursuing. And I'm going to throw this out there. I do like fighting games. That doesn't mean I'm good at them. So
No.
If you're going to be expecting, full-on, combo demonstrations...
I think it's a fair thing to say that neither of us are in, the Platinum League of any given fighting game.
Yeah, we have video evidence of me thoroughly being Yamcha'd when I tried playing online in Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Do we have it? Oh, do we?
Yes, we do.
Did
It's
we
on
go
your
online
channel.
that time?
Yeah, we did. We
Oh,
went online,
okay.
and I had my butt handed to me twice.
Yeah, so, and here's the thing. I love fighting games. I love the story that's attached to them, like I do with most other games that I play or anime that I watch. But the bottom line is that I was good in the arcades local to me. If you put me in front of like some of those champion Evo players, 5 seconds I'd probably last. 2?
Yeah.
5 is optimistic. 2.
Yeah.
I'd get trounced. Like let's just say if I go up on Killer Instinct, I'd be ultra comboed every round.
Yeah. If I were playing Tekken, I'd be the guy who gets constantly air juggled.
Yeah. That's just going to be the way that it kind of goes with it. I don't have a problem with this. Do I think that there needs to be a subsection of a podcast? Not really, because there's not really like when it comes to fighting games, there isn't a whole lot of news to get into. So at that point, if we did a subsection, it would be like once every 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
so I mean,
like
it's something that we can do. We can roundtable it, but it's not necessarily something you're going to hear about week to week.
Yeah, like most you could hope for in terms of the podcast as a whole is if there's like a game we're all excited about, probably like a first impressions sort of discussion about it. Basically something like Why We Geek would be what you could expect.
Pretty much. And actually, in a lot of cases, Why We Geek is going to be taking a few different directions. Not necessarily because I don't like the format, but because I want to expand on it. Because, again, it's a pet project. I want to keep evolving it kind of deal. So you guys will get that information. But I will say this, and this is where my idea kind of goes into it, is for those who don't know, me and my wife started live streaming. Technically, me and Alex are supposed to do it at some point, but I don't know when that point is. Just simply because our work schedules on the days that we want to do it never work out. Safe to say, Alex.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So me and my wife Andrea started live streaming because we knew that we could make it work at this time, and we could enjoy it. I have been teasing here and there that we would bring in other people from the Geek News podcast or in other ways to be able to help with discussions and be able to join in on some of the fun that's happening. And maybe one of the ways that we do this is that, I don't know, once every 2 months or something, we do a fighting game-based live stream, which I've already been told by my wife she's not going to be involved in. Unless there's another conversation going on in the chat, she's probably not going to be involved. Where me and Romney can just sit down for a couple of hours with a fighting game and just hammer out a few rounds. Maybe even put up like a private area where people can fight each other, kind of thing. And we'll even comment on some of this stuff.
Maybe.
That's at least the idea I came up with.
Yeah, it's just a lot of it just comes down to, well, the basic logistics of it, because one thing a lot of people tend to forget, we all have day jobs and other things we have to juggle our time around. So if we can make it work and if there's a demand, we're open to it. But, well...
Because I can definitely tell you guys it's not going to work on the same schedule as me and Andrea. We're definitely going to have to think in advance and plan things out for our work schedules to make it work. That's why I'm saying this probably can't happen more than like once every 2 months. Because as much as I want to be able to do the multiplayer content, doing stuff like Mario Party and Mario Kart is so much easier than trying to get a Smash Bros. Stream going. Because unless I'm playing with a bunch of randos, which in some cases, I mean, that's not as entertaining. The other thing, too, that I think I should also bring up, and I'm not knocking Romney or anybody to this extent, but where me and Romney have a lot of shared interests in fighting games, we also, I think, have some diverging interests as well. Would that be correct?
Yes. There would be kind of different ways we would go about it, especially in regards to the different types of fighting games, because, I mean, a good example of a game that, while fun to play isn't as much fun to watch would be Dissidia, for example, where, it's kind of enjoyable, but if you're just a bystander, unless you know what's going on, it's kind of boring.
Well, that would be a similar interest for both of us because we like Dissidia. What I was actually going for is, like, for example, you probably know more about Guilty Gear than I do. I have a passing interest in Guilty Gear. I will probably pick up the 2020 entry, but you probably have more interest in it than I do.
Yep, and even as someone with as much of an interest I still have a hard time understanding, well, a lot of the plot because it's so bonkers, but Yeah.
And the other thing too is that I have a feeling if we did this, then a lot of people would want at some point for popular fighting games to make it in there. For example, Street Fighter V, Mortal Kombat 11, maybe even if I think we're going to get an announcement in the next couple of years, but Killer Instinct. I love Killer Instinct. I'm not sure if you're a fan or not.
Never played it.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, we used to have a panelist named Olo Gomez where we would actually debate a lot of fighting games. It would be cool if we had that 3-person panel, but again, a lot of these interests are going to be different. So I have a feeling there are also going to be some nights where it's going to be Romney playing Soul Calibur, and then when Drak heads the controller, he's going to get annihilated because he's not as good at Soul Calibur as everybody else is.
Yep, and it's also a case where there are just some games that, even although they are fun, they're just very, 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 very niche. I mean, we've talked about Guilty Gear, we've talked about Soul Calibur, but then you've also got lesser known but still influential stuff like Dead or Alive, as well as various other more obscure Arc System Works games as well.
Yeah,
and
Blaze
even
Blue. I can't even think of all the titles that they have.
Yeah, and then there's even other more obscure fighting game titles like Fantasy Strike and Dive Kick that, although there are diehard followings for both, not a lot of people, people know about Dive Kick, not a lot of people know about Fantasy Strike.
Mm-hmm. But I can guarantee you one thing that might happen. We haven't covered EVO every year just simply because sometimes they don't have major announcements, like, say, in the last few years. Because I remember back in, 2015, the announcements were kind of meh. But the reason we covered the 2019 one was because a lot of people were talking about it, and a lot of people wanted us to talk about it. Because this was one of those years where it benefited everybody. Soul Calibur fans, Tekken fans, Dragon Ball FighterZ fans, everybody got something.
Yep, and there was actually more news. Between the stuff for the SNK group, the new King of Fighters, Haomaru being in Soul Calibur 6, as well as the release of Cassandra, the release of Janemba, the announcement of Season 2 or 2.0 of Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle. Basically, there was a lot of stories there, and it was a pretty good chance that there was at least something from that announcement that would appeal to even a more casual fan like myself.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen. We will cover fighting games when we can do it, and I'm not saying that Alex is completely out of it. If we're talking about Smash Brothers, then he'll probably join in, because he's played Smash Brothers. You've also played Marvel vs. Capcom. I mean, you've played some fighting games because of exposure to me, but yeah, that's going to be how limited it is. We'll talk about it when we can, and then we'll try and work out these streams and see if we can do it I don't know if it's going to be like a once a month thing. That seems a little too hard to plan, but maybe once every 2 or 3 months we could probably do it.
Yeah, kind of like once a quarter.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll make it like a bigger stream so that we can cover 1 or 2 games. I don't know. Well, this is definitely something that me and Romney will have to talk about off podcast. But that's pretty much all we have tonight. We thank you guys so much for both the listeners' questions as well as the story suggestions. We really do appreciate you guys' contributions. But if people want to reach out to us and check out the content that we create, as well as ask us about any opinions that we shared in the podcast, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
Find me on YouTube. I'm Shadow Blizzard 3000, and I do anime content and a little gaming content on the side. And if you always want to be blasted out a new video, know when I'm posting stuff, you can follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right. Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost, Utah, how do people follow your content and ask your opinions on things?
Well, you can always find my content when I actually have something to upload, both on YouTube and Facebook under the same handle, Studio Ghost Utah. I upload to both when I actually have something to upload, something that may change in the near future. More on that later. And you can also follow me on Instagram if you want pictures of cats, food that I cook, cats, random tidbits about Nintendo Switch games, followed by even more cats. And that is Romney Does Art, a handle that has become more and more of a lie with each passing month. And if you want to
cats
share
are art, Romney. I'm just saying.
Moving on,
yes.
If you want to if you want to send stories to me specifically to ask my specific opinion, to engage with me directly, seriously, I won't bite, not even if you ask me to, you can find me on Twitter at Romney Reviews. For some reason, Twitter doesn't like the apostrophe S, so yes, it's Romney Reviews. So to reiterate, YouTube and Facebook, Studio Goes to Utah. Instagram, Romney Does Art. And Twitter, Romney Reviews. And once again, continuing the trend of Romney's Reading Club, I'm recommending once again another book. This is going to be a theme for a while, people. Bear with me. The book that I'm recommending this week is it's basically a self-help book, but one that is actually pretty interesting. It's titled Zen in the Martial Arts by Joe Hyams. Joe Hyams was a journalist and writer. He was a martial artist who studied with the likes of Bruce Lee and Ed Parker, names that need almost no introduction unless you've never studied martial arts in your life. And what this book is not about how to apply Zen to your martial arts training, but more how to apply principles of Zen that are communicated in the martial arts to your daily life. It's a lot more anecdotal, it's a lot more casual, it's very much Joe Hyams discussing his own experiences, both things he'd learned from Ed Parker, Bruce Lee, among other instructors, and just of how to apply them to everyday scenarios. Like it says in the book itself, this isn't a book about how to defeat a person, this is just taking what I've learned from the martial arts and applying them to my normal life. I've been listening to the Audible version. It's a pretty short read. I think it's only like 3 hours long if you're doing the audiobook. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation, is Zen in the Martial Arts by Joe Hyams, available where all books are sold.
All right. And if people want to get a hold of me, the best way to be able to do so is on my Twitter, at Drak2326. That's usually where I do answer a few of those questions when they do get presented to me. You can also follow me on Instagram, at Drak2326, but there you're just getting family pictures, roughly. That's pretty much what I do with it, is I take pictures of my kids. I probably shouldn't do that, but I do, because it's fun. That's the way it goes. But you're also on my YouTube channel, so make sure to check out that content. Currently, right now, we have playthroughs going on of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, as well as Final Fantasy VIII. And me and my wife, like I said, do live stream every Saturday and Tuesday evening, so you guys can join us and make fun of the fact that I die a lot in Dark Souls, or make fun of the fact that for some reason we find weird words funny, because that's what we do. If you guys want to support the podcast, though, first things first, thank you guys so much for those who showed up to the live stream recording. If you want to be able to do that, we stream every Friday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, so you guys can join us on YouTube. Otherwise, you can support the RSS feed, which is what we would ask a little bit more, and that is geekynro.libsyn.com. And you'll be able to get all of the episodes that we have up until that point. I know that it's a little backed up, but we're working on that round the clock, I promise. It'll all be up there very soon. But you guys can support us there, and it also allows for iTunes, and I think we've kind of worked things out for Spotify, so we're going to be on there very soon as well. Google Play is just, well, a bastard to work with right now. I have no other way to be able to state it. If you guys want to be able to follow us on social media, the podcast is under the exact same tagline for both Facebook and Twitter, and that is GeekyNRO. So you can be able to support us there and get up to the minute information on when we're going live, the stuff we're going to be talking about, or even some suggestions. We have been getting some suggestions through the Twitter feed, so that is another great place to be able to do that. And leave your commentary. And of course, if you want to leave story suggestions like so many did this evening, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for this podcast. So thank you guys so much for showing up. We really do appreciate all the support that you guys have given us. And we will be back next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. So for me, for Romney, and for Alex, we will see you guys next time.